Hello everyone, welcome to yet another day in this clown decade, the decade where things are only going to get worse before they get better. And one thing that is going to make things worse is when people who should know better and should distinguish themselves from the mainstream media being dirty smear merchants don't do their due diligence when they are making simply ridiculous accusations. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the stupid meme that Reform are not democratic or only have 3 members, or if you pay for your 25 quid to Reform, you're becoming a subscriber, not a member. It's all just complete nonsense that, frankly, all stems from a bitter man who has decided to go on a one-man war against Reform simply because Reform did completely standard things after this particular man did not win his seat for Parliament. Yes, I'm talking about Ben Habib, and specifically this part of his video where he announces that he is leaving Reform UK.
I also have concerns about Reform UK, then the Brexit Party, because of the structure of the party. As people will probably know by now, Reform UK Limited is a limited company. The political party is a limited company. It has 15 shares, 9 of which are owned by Nigel. And it was Nigel's control of that party, 60% control of that party, that enabled him to stand down 317 candidates in 2019 against Boris Johnson without any consultation of any of us in the party.
Now, this whole part of his criticism, as far as I'm aware, that is all true, yes. The Brexit Party, which is now called Reform UK Limited, is indeed registered as a private company on Companies House. And indeed, there are only 3 active shareholders at the moment, Nigel Farage, Richard Tice, and Murtash Azani. But another point I'd like to bring up, because a lot of people jumped on this to say, oh, it's just a scam for basically Reform members to just give these 3 people money. No, it is incorporated as a not-for-profit. They literally cannot profit from this company without breaking many, many business laws, which will land them in an awful lot of trouble. So when you give money to Reform UK, you know for sure that it cannot go to the profits of the shareholders, which, as we saw, included Nigel Farage and Richard Tice. So no, it is not a scam either for the people that have been saying that, but that's not really what this video is about. As I say, this is about Ben Habib not getting his way and being a bit bitter that he was not consulted on the decision to stand down a number of Brexit Party MPs, candidates anyway, in the 2019 election, even though at the time many people, including myself, thought that it was a good and honourable decision, as the main point of that election was to get Brexit done. And frankly, at the time, we all thought Boris Johnson would get Brexit done, which, to be fair, to an extent he did. But since that's happened, we still have treaties and what have you signed up where we have to follow EU regulation and all that. So Brexit was only kind of done, but everyone's hope was with Brexit being done, they'd get the message that they need to get it completely done. Obviously, that didn't happen. Hence, Reform UK has come back because of immigration, cost of living, a number of issues like that, where being under EU regulation also doesn't help. So what's Ben's problem? Effectively, they're not pure enough when it comes to talking about Brexit, but I've skipped all that bit.
So I have always had a problem with the structure of Reform UK. So when Richard Tice approached me in late 2022 to join Reform UK, I said I would only do so if Nigel gave up his shares in the party, democratised it, and that we had a consensual way of running the party.
I mean, frankly, that is just a very silly demand in my view. You know, this is a party that is effectively run by businessmen. I am not surprised that when they set up the party, they set it up as a business, because that is where their expertise are. And it is quite clear that this is not a business venture. I don't know what more these people have to do to prove to people that they're serious politicians, but that is a video for another day. But at the point Ben's talking about, and even now, Reform Party is effectively Nigel Farage's party. Nobody has joined Reform Party under any illusion that Nigel Farage is going to be kicked out as leader. I do not understand why this was such an issue in the first place. But obviously Ben Habib has been part of the Brexit Party, decisions were made that he was not happy with, and effectively, because he was, I think he was an MEP at the time, he said, oh, well, clearly we are people who should have a say how parliamentary candidates are selected and how they stand. And in reality, as he says, he can understand why the decision was taken, but he's basically annoyed that there wasn't some sort of meeting or conference where, I don't know, every MEP and every candidate came along to join and put their hands up to say, we want this decision or not, which, given it's such an insurgent party, I don't really see the advantage of this. Unless you're one of the big two, I don't know why you'd want to get to that point when the best success you've had is to be a protest party to the Tories. It in no way was a serious party at the time, it was just there as a protest vote, so who cares if it's democratised? But anyway, time goes on and Ben Habib has even more issues with Reform UK.
After some discussion, Richard came back to me and said Nigel had refused to sell down his shares into some kind of broader ownership.
Okay, fine, I don't care.
And further discussions took place, and eventually I agreed to join the party on the strength of a letter that Richard, as leader, wrote to me, saying that the party would be run on a consensual basis, that there'd be no deals done with the Tories, that we would fight for Brexit, that Brexit hadn't been done, and that we would fight for Northern Ireland.
Okay, so you got your demands and wishes, and yet he still left. Apparently he was very happy at the time because Richard Tice was leader, and they were going up from like 6% to 8% in the polls or something.
And then Nigel reappointed himself leader of the party on the 3rd of June, and I knew at that point, frankly, I was extremely concerned when Nigel came back, because I had fundamental differences with Nigel on the issue of Brexit, fundamental issues with the way the party was owned and operated.
Yeah, this is the thing, and this is a problem with an awful lot of people. People just do not like Nigel Farage. In fact, you can have personal differences with him, but at the end of the day, we're trying to win the game of politics here, and a good way to do that is to have successful politicians on your side. Nigel Farage, by far, is the best insurgent right-winger that we have ever seen. Maybe not necessarily ever, but certainly of the 21st century. The man effectively got Brexit, managed to force the referendum with UKIP, managed to force some sort of withdrawal through, as we went through before, helping Boris Johnson get in. The man is politically savvy. I think it's worth pointing out at this point too, when Farage became leader, membership went up, people wanted to get involved with the party. I get the feeling had we carried on the way that Ben Habib wanted to, we'd be seeing yet another UKIP. An insurgent party that don't really know what it's doing, and effectively you have too much internal factionalism, and from there you end up having split the party up and effectively they just die. What are UKIP doing now? Not much. Their leader goes round to socialist meetings to have a go at them. That's effectively what's going on now. They pick a spokesman who's moved to America, Calvin Robinson, which is not a serious party. Nigel Farage is a serious politician, therefore reform is taken seriously. Clearly this was a good move. Anyway, during this time, Ben Habib went back to Richard Tice to make more demands.
Look, when the election's done, we've got to democratise the party. This cannot go on. And I made a similar call towards the tail end of the general election.
Yep, still going on about democratising the party, even though everyone's happy with Nigel in charge.
And to his credit, Nigel, on the 5th of July, declared that they would democratise the party.
Oh, good. Well, what's your problem with this point, then?
But when that constitution turned up, I realised it was a document that I had looked at a year and a half before and rejected. It simply didn't really work. There'd been a few tweaks made, but it doesn't work. And it absolutely did not have the finest legal minds on it at all.
Okay, well, I'm going to start needing specifics here because, as far as I'm concerned, I'm skipping ahead a bit, but the Constitution was given to people at the conference and then they had a vote on it at the conference and people voted for it. I mean, if you're going to democratise a party, the party voting in the literal Constitution is probably a good place to start and say, yeah, it's a pretty democratised party. Of course, they might be voting in Nigel Farage to be leader forever, but that's not what happened, is it, Ben?
At about the same time, Nigel also declared in a little piece to camera that he did that he would convert Reform UK Limited from a company limited by shares to a company limited by guarantee, and that it would be opened up to the so-called members to actually become genuine members because they would collectively own the party.
I really don't care if he does that or not. Again, there is absolutely nobody under the illusion that the party leader is going to be anyone else than Nigel Farage for the next 5 years, possibly 10 years, I don't think they really care. People are giving money to Reform. When you give money to Reform, there's a big old picture of Nigel Farage on the front page of the Reform website. You know what you're getting into. And for some reason, Ben Habib seems to have this illusion that people don't know what they're paying for. When most people pay, and I've done this for many parties before, when most people pay to join a political party, effectively they're under not much more of an impression than they're going to give money to this party, have access to the meetings, and be asked to help them canvass. They really aren't expecting much more than that. But Ben Habib seems to have this idea that they can have a say in absolutely everything the party does. Well, that would just be absolutely ridiculous. You'd end up having what happened to Labour with Jeremy Corbyn, where the party just gets taken over by lunatics. Honestly, you look at the Labour Party over the past 10 years, it's no particular surprise that Keir Starmer effectively went full Stalin on them. There are places for democratic processes in parties, there are other times where there aren't. Ben Habib seems to be on the full let's have democracy everywhere side, which just won't work.
Well, here we are at the end of November, and actually that conversion hasn't taken place. By the way, my lawyer tells me that conversion cannot take place. You can't convert a company limited by shares to one limited by guarantee. You have to set up a new company.
Well, yeah, that won't be too difficult. You just set up the new company and then move all the assets from Reform over to that new company. Okay. And maybe it's not ever going to happen. How many people are seriously talking about, man, I really wish that Reform was actually a company limited by guarantee rather than limited by shares. That is one thing I really want from Reform. It's Ben Habib's crusade of one man that is talking about that. But anyway, I think you get the idea by now. Ben Habib's main thesis is that Reform have not democratised and he doesn't like the Constitution. He doesn't say why he doesn't like the Constitution, he just doesn't like it.
And even the slightly poor document that passes for a constitution has not been put to the Electoral Commission for its approval.
This is one of those things I've tried searching on Google. I cannot find if that is true or not. But I'm not going to lie, I would be shocked if that updated constitution had not been sent to the Electoral Commission. But as I say, I tried to find evidence one way or the other of whether this is true or not. The Electoral Commission does not have a record of each party's constitution on their website. However, the updated constitution is on Reform's website, so again, I would be shocked if it was legal to show that this is our constitution without the Electoral Commission having approved of it. So with all the evidence I can gather, it looks like that the new constitution is the actual constitution that Reform have at the moment, and Ben hates them both anyway, so I don't know if he's telling the truth there or not. But really, this is besides the point. Let's focus on the main point of the video, which is Ben Habib claiming that Reform UK do not have a democratic constitution, and that we are just so-called members when really we're subscribers. You know, we don't have any power in the party, apparently. And this is something that Ben Habib tends to repeat an awful lot. I mean, here was him not long after leaving Reform UK on the Lotus Eaters.
You recently announced that you've left the Reform Party, or at least stop subscribing to the Reform Party. I'm not even sure how the membership works, actually.
Yeah. This introduction is going to be a continuing theme throughout this video, in that Carl has gone along with the, frankly, lie that there are no members of Reform, there are only subscribers, and that we don't have any sort of power in the party, we don't have a say in party leader, for example, despite the fact that the constitution was voted on by the members by this point. So by that fact alone, it is obvious that they are members, not subscribers. But it's kind of the blazon, I don't know how it works actually, that kind of gets me, because this is showing that Carl is just taking Ben Habib at all his word, when, as we're going to go through, Ben appears to be a bitter man who is happy to lie about Reform. But anyway, yes, Ben once again describes how they're not members, they're subscribers.
And also, the party isn't democratised. There is no kind of check and balance or broad body of people that appoint the leadership and so on. It's a company owned by Nigel and Richard Tice. And Nigel has said, to be fair to him, that he's going to democratise, but it hasn't happened. And some of the statements coming out have been misleading, in my view, about what they're going to do.
So, to put it frankly, it is exactly this type of thing that Ben Habib keeps going on about that is just a downright lie. He is just lying. Just to labour this point, this is specifically what he said about democratisation.
There is no kind of check and balance or broad body of people that appoint the leadership and so on.
There is no check and balance to appoint the leadership and so on. Well, I'm sorry, let's take a look at what the Constitution actually says about electing the leader. So right from the start, the party's leader's term of office shall run for 5 years. That means that you have terms of 5 set years to be a leader of the Reform Party. However, the leadership board may extend this term for whatever reason, say an election's coming up or something like that. However, they can only do this to extend it by another 5 years. Seems perfectly reasonable to me. And obviously party leaders can last for more than a term. So, now it comes to the election. So, in 5 years' time after this constitution was passed this year, well, only this year for one more day, you then have an election. So, upon passing of this constitution, the party leader shall be the party leader that proposed it and shall be deemed to begin their term at the time of passage, i.e. Nigel Farage has 5 years left in this term. The leadership election shall be held should the party leader die or become incapable of leading on the passing of a vote of no confidence, as in section 6.28. And this is a motion of no confidence in the party leader and can be proposed in 2 ways. By 50 members of the parliamentary party, i.e. by 50 MPs. Obviously they only have 5 at the moment, so that can never happen. Or 50% of the members of the parliamentary party, whichever is greater, i.e. if they have 300, it has to be 150 people who send in letters of no confidence, writing to the chairman and requesting a motion of no confidence. For the avoidance of doubt, clause 6.28.1 is only applicable in the event of the parliamentary party if it consists of more than 100 MPs. Right, so that all makes sense. Obviously, that is not going to happen in the next 5 years, due to this Parliament only having 5 Reform MPs. Still, perfectly reasonable. That's pretty much how the other parties work. But also, there's a second clause here. By 50% of all members in good standing writing to the chairman requesting a motion of no confidence. In other words, half the membership, so at this point in time, over 75,000 members, send in a letter of no confidence to say we don't want this leader anymore. When either of these things happen, there will be a meeting with leadership where the only thing they will discuss is getting rid of the leader. If the party leader cannot attend the meeting, he must be given a reasonable opportunity to attend on a subsequent occasion to take place within 10 further days, provided that he has been given reasonable notice of such a rearranged meeting. In the event of the motion of no confidence party leader being passed by the board, the party leader shall be deemed to have resigned. In other words, this is actually more democratic than either the Tories or Labour. Members do not have the power to file a no confidence motion in the leader. Already, by saying that this is not democratised, it is an absolutely absurd thing to say. Anyway, back to the actual elections. Upon the party leader's completion of his term in office or resignation, an election shall be held within 90 days of the completion of the leader's term of office. Only members in good standing and on the list on the date the leadership election is called shall be eligible to be a candidate, provided that they satisfy the requirements set out by the rules. So, in good standing effectively means you've not been kicked out of the party for whatever reason. Effectively, it will just mean most members. 99% of them. The board then deem how the election should take place, and the party leader obviously then resigns as his term is up or if he's been kicked out. If there is only one valid nomination for the post of party leader, again, nomination rules are set by the board at the time of the election. I think this is to say, do you do it more like the Tory party where they're nominated via MP's decision, or should say it be nominated by a certain amount of people from the membership saying we want this person. I mean, at the moment it's completely pointless to really go into details on this. They have 5 MPs, and if Farage dies, it's going to be either Richard Tice or Rupert Lowe, I'd imagine, nominated for party leader. And then it is a simple majority of votes cast by people eligible to vote, which is most of the party membership. This is just a very long-winded way of me saying there is clearly a democratic process within the party here. The reason that Nigel Farage is still the leader is because voting for this constitution clearly states that Nigel Farage will be leader upon the voting in of this constitution. But just to labour the point even more, here is how an election of Tory party leader is done. So nominations for party leader is done at the discretion of the 1922 committee. Over the past few years, when they've had about 4 different leaders, it has been a number of MPs supporting you through a number of ballots by the 1922 Commission until they have 2 candidates left, and then it goes to the party membership to vote on those 2. Already this is slightly less democratic than the way that Reform do it, because it doesn't matter how many people are going for leadership. It is a vote via the whole of the membership, and whoever gets the most vote wins. No need for all this politics between the MPs of, oh, shall we tactically vote for James Cleverly to get in? Nah, we'll be fine with Kemi Badenoch. Then it's a simple majority between the two. So when people say, oh, you're just subscribers, not members, I just want to make it very clear that actually Reform do have more of a say over their leader than the Tories. So I don't know what the hell you're talking about. If we're able to call Tory members members and not subscribers, then we have even more reason to call Reform members members rather than subscribers. And Labour's process for selecting a new leader is a bit more long-winded. Nominations for leader have to be supported by 20% of the Commons members, i.e. MPs, and they also have to have 5% of the branches in favour of them, or 5% of the membership need to back the particular candidate. Again, this as well is already more democratic than the Tories, and is it more or less democratic than Reform? Well, I don't know. That depends entirely on how the board wish to deal with the nominations. Anyway, through this long-winded constitution, they say the votes for the nominees to become party leader shall be cast by both party members and affiliated supporters. I believe that basically means union members. So I would actually technically call this less democratic than the Reform Party, because only paying Reform Party members can actually vote in the Reform Party. But if you're a union member, because Labour and the unions are effectively the same thing, you can have people outside of the Labour Party voting, making it technically less democratic for party members, as their votes are worth less due to all the union members voting. Anyway, the vote shall be counted by preferential ballot, and these votes are then total, and the candidate receiving more than half the votes shall be appointed and declared elected. Should they not get 50% of the first choice, it's then done by second, third and fourth choice, etc., until they end up with someone with over half the votes. And that is how your Labour leader is elected. Again, more democratic than the Tories, but on a technicality, slightly less democratic than Reform. So I mean this unironically. When people are going round, and we're going through some examples, saying they're subscribers, not members, I don't know what the hell they are talking about. They are people that haven't bothered to do the due diligence. They've just taken what Ben Habib has said and run with it, and I see this absolutely everywhere. First off, we have a double whammy of Carl Benjamin and Lawrence Fox, with Carl saying, well, it's a private subscription service, not an actual party, which again is just a ridiculous thing to say. If the Electoral Commission has approved you to be a party, you are a party. It doesn't matter if you're a private company, a charity, or however else you're registered. If the Electoral Commission deems you to be a party, you are a party. And parties have members. What are you a subscription service for? What service are Reform giving you? At least say that you're donators. Don't say a subscription service. As a Reform member myself, you get access to newsletters, to their conferences, to go to branch meetings. Guess what happened at the branch meetings I've been to? Oh, we had a vote on who should be branch treasurer and all that sort of thing. You get access to vote for who the leader's going to be when that comes around in 5 years' time. Again, no other party has a term limit. Every 5 years, the Reform members will be checked, and do you still want this man as your leader? And they can vote for it. But when you have someone like Thatcher, she was just kept in for 11 years until she was eventually kicked out because the MPs got fed up with her. And she didn't even get kicked out, she actually had to resign because she was still popular with the MPs and the party at the time. So just saying it's not an actual party is just absurd. Do your due diligence, Carl, you're supposed to be different. Anyway, Lawrence says, that's why I'm confused as to why they use the term members rather than subscribers or registered supporters. Members have a say, subscribers don't. And I have to say that is an absolutely ridiculous thing for Lawrence Fox to say. He is the self-declared leader of the Reclaim Party, and I've had a Google about. I can't even find their constitution that I know that they have, because they will have had to send it to the Electoral Commission. But please, Mr. Fox, do tell me, what is the process for your members to kick you out? Do you have a term limit? Is there any way to get people to file a motion of no confidence for you? If there is, what's the election? How are people nominated? Nobody knows, so I can only assume you're even less democratic and your members have less of a say in your party. What a ridiculous thing for Lawrence Fox, of all people, to say. But even funnier from all this was when a Tory councillor said in reply to someone who joined Reform UK to become a member, said, "Mate, you've become a subscriber, not a member. Might as well have joined Disney Plus or Netflix." Again, an absolutely ridiculous thing for a Tory member of all things to say when, as I've just gone through with their constitutions, they are less democratic, their members have less of a say in who becomes leader than them. I don't know why people are going on with this absolutely ridiculous nonsense from Ben Habib. The story behind Ben Habib's bitterness is, as he says, they're simply not pure enough for him in terms of Brexit, Northern Ireland he goes on about as well. He wants to focus on, frankly, quite niche things. Nobody cares about Brexit anymore, or at least the general public aren't going to understand the arguments, because all they see is a bunch of immigrants still coming in and things getting way more expensive when they go shopping. They are going to effectively think Brexit is done. There is no point trying to bring it up again. It just looks like that you're a bit like Remainers when they constantly bring up Brexit. It looks like that you're one of the Japanese people on the remote islands who still think the war's going on in 1976. Yeah, it's not done perfectly. Reform are probably going to deal with that when they get in. It's not one of the things you have to go on about because people don't care about it. But anyway, because Nigel Farage is more politically savvy than Ben Habib, obviously he doesn't go on about it. And then when he does actually democratise the party, Ben Habib says, oh, it's not democratic at all, despite the fact, as we've gone through, it is literally more democratic than any of the other major parties. What has really happened here is that Ben Habib was a parliamentary candidate for, I can't remember what seat, didn't win that seat, and he was deputy leader along with Dr. David Bull, I believe he's called. Nigel Farage had to say to both of them, it doesn't make sense for either of you to have an official position when you're not in Parliament. The whole point is that you have to be an MP to have any position within the leadership of the party. That is the whole point. They are supposed to be representing not only their constituents, but the party membership as well. You can't really do that when you're outside Parliament. So guess what? He gives a deputy leader role to Richard Tice, who then officially is the leader of Reform when Nigel Farage is not in Parliament, but Richard Tice is. Why would you give that role to anyone outside Parliament? So Ben Habib basically spat his dummy out. Dr. David Bull, he's still at conferences, he's introducing people at these conferences, he still does work on Talk TV, effectively being a Reform activist. Ben Habib completely did the opposite as soon as that happened. The most he'd do is retweet some tweets from Reform UK. The rest of the time, he would complain about them, he would whinge about them, he'd say Brexit isn't done, he'd say Reform aren't doing good enough on this, that and the other. There would be barely anything positive he said. Hence Nigel Farage had a go at him, which I used to say, oh, I think that's a bit harsh, but looking more into it, no, I think it was fairly reasonable. To be quite happy that someone who is effectively working as an anti-activist within the party left the party, because effectively, as we can see now and since, he is just lying about the party. Why would you not want to get rid of someone who is lying about the party from within? Why would you not be happy when someone like that leaves? But obviously an awful lot of people who also feel like they've been burned by Reform, or don't feel Reform is pure enough, just take this and run with it as well. This is why Tory members and Tory councillors are saying the same thing, because they've not looked into it, they don't care, they just think it's a good attack line. But as I have gone through, it is not, and anyone repeating the lie is little more than a smear merchant. Yes, I do include Carl in that, because there is absolutely no excuse to just take anyone's word for anything in this day and age, even from the right of politics. There are dishonest people everywhere. Hell, I'd even go as far as saying that people in Reform are probably dishonest as well. It's politics. What do you expect? But what that means is that you should not take anyone at their word necessarily, unless you really trust them and you consider them a friend. Obviously then that's different, but random people on Twitter, people from political parties who clearly feel like they've been burned and clearly will take opportunities to bite back, why would you take them at their word when they are talking about the party that they feel burned them? I'm seeing it everywhere these days, and I don't see many people doing their due diligence on this, and this whole thing about Reform being a subscription service and a membership, it is the number one thing that I keep seeing that nobody seems to want to correct the record on. So I suppose you can consider this video correcting the record. And then you get people like World by Wolf. This is an account that I followed for about 2 weeks and then had to stop following because it was just complete schizophrenia on my timeline. Wolf has made many tweets in the past, again criticising Reform. And again, there are reasons to criticise Reform, but there's an awful lot of dross out there with these criticisms. As I've gone through in this video, saying that they're not democratic, absolutely ridiculous. Oh, you're just a subscriber. That's then even more true of every other party, and nobody's complained about this. Before we properly get into this tweet, it's another thing I have to say. Who the hell was talking about the structure of parties before Ben Habib left Reform and complained in part due to the structure of the party? The answer is no one. Where did you ever see in newspapers, the structure of parties like Tories and Labour need to change? You never saw it. Where did you see people saying we need a more democratic process when picking leaders? Well, it depends which side you were. If it was Gordon Brown coming in through the Labour Party's constitution, people were saying, this needs to go to a general election. They weren't saying the internals of Labour need to change. Same with all the times we had the 4 PMs from Tories over the last few years. Nobody was saying the internal structure sucked. The reason they were saying it's not democratic was because it didn't go to a general election. Yet for some reason when it comes to Reform, the bar is so high when it comes to their party being a genuine party that it's just pointless having the conversation. And it is nothing but smear merchants who are trying to have a go at them for that. Because there is this really big problem on the right, as I've said before, where there are crabs in a bucket. If you can't be successful on the right, then nobody can be successful. That is just how it is for some people. And my number one example of that would be Lawrence Fox. Anyway, into this tweet. Reform supporters, we need to start questioning our own side. I want to make it clear that Wolf is saying this after months of whinging and bitching about Reform, and then he joined it like half a week ago, and now he's saying, fellow Reform supporters. No, block this man, unironically. He is not an honest actor. There are far too many people in the Reform base who are willing to give the benefit of doubt to anyone who now claims to be a Reform supporter. Okay. Let's just take the case for Nick Candy, Reform's new treasurer, i.e. Reform's money man. Yes, believe it or not, when you donate millions to a party that has barely any money, you're probably going to have to give them something in return. Candy has been a Blair and One Nation supporter all his life and is a close friend with Blair and Mandelson. So is basically anyone else who's donated to politics and is a millionaire. Duh. He even publicly supported Starmer at the last election. No, he didn't. That is a lie. That is a lie. Here is what Nick Candy actually did.
I didn't vote for Labour at this general election. I said Keir Starmer's a good guy with good values and that it was time for change. After some 13 years of some promises that were made that weren't delivered on, I felt it was time for change. However, the last 4 or 5 months under Labour has been a disaster for them as well. They know it, we know it, the country knows it.
So no, he didn't support Starmer at all. He didn't even vote for him. Just, there is a massive problem on the right where people will just lie. And people just go along with it. Ben Habib is just lying. And it's made a whole meme about Reform that isn't even true. I find it amazing how forever people are going on about mainstream media lies. They just lie. They just feed off each other's lies and just keep going on with it. And the right have done it right here. And nobody's done due diligence. And then any Reform supporter like myself comes along and says, actually, this isn't true. People just call you a liar and call you a shill. And it's like, no, I'm sorry. I have the evidence right here in this video. I send it in tweets. Please stop lying about them. And they won't. And as I say, it's a crabs in a bucket mentality. Nigel Farage and Reform are being very successful. It's not in a way that people quite like. You know, they don't go on about demographics or something like that. And so they'd rather they just fail. And we wonder why the left always win. Anyway, Candy is a property developer and private equity manager. Good. Fine. He's 51, meaning his entire career and wealth is built under the current political and economic consensus. Yeah, which he says he doesn't like. Okay. Yeah, okay. I mean, what are you expecting here? Like, you're just going to have a... Effectively, what Wolf is saying here is that we need a communist revolution. That is effectively what's said here. You need a revolution of the proletariat because anyone rich you can't trust. I'm sorry, I completely reject this Marxist outline. Go away. He doesn't want change, despite the fact he just said he does. Guys like Candy cozy up to whoever they think is going to win. Well, that part's usually true, so they can ensure we never get a government that disrupts their business model. Again, not necessarily true. Zahir Yusuf was a member of the Tory party until August 2024, and Nick Candy supported Labour at the last election. Again, no, he didn't. These two men are now chairman and treasurer of Reform. Yeah, it's called building a consensus. I mean, for God's sake, Wolf voted Tory last election. So again, I am not... No, he didn't. The election before. So I am not taking anyone seriously who says if you've ever been part of Labour or Tories, you can't be part of Reform and be trusted. It's just ridiculous. We have all been part of the Tories before. There is absolutely no way you can make this accusation with a straight face. People were part of the Tories to have the changes that they promised. As Nick Candy says, the Tories kept promising all these changes that we wanted. That's why we voted for them. And they didn't deliver. Okay, maybe we just need Starmer. Maybe he'll actually do something that will be useful. Oh, no, he doesn't? Fine, we'll go Reform then. Reform look like they're going to win. They look like they're actually serious about their promises. It blows my mind. Like, by this metric, you can't trust anyone who can actually wield any power. And at which point, you literally may as well just give up on life. You can't change anything. Just give up with politics. You can't do anything. Find a different hobby where lying will actually get ahead. Why isn't anyone asking how two uniparty supporting millionaires or billionaires now running Reform's day-to-day operations? They're not. Nigel Farage is. A chairman, overall, his power is effectively to dictate where meetings are going to go, and obviously put forward the motion of no confidence. Neither of these people have any say in what policy is. And I mean, for God's sake, they joined a party full well knowing that one, Nigel Farage was in charge, and two, what their contract was. It's another thing I always see about people talking about Reform, is that, people who are part of Reform don't know what they're about. Yes, we obviously do. They had a contract. They are constantly reaffirming their positions, and they basically never change. Why do people just lie about Reform all the time? It's so confusing. And in terms of being a treasurer, again, all a treasurer really does is be a glorified accountant. They say, yes, we have resources for this, that, and the other. We do have resources for that, but it might go better elsewhere. Effectively, they just sign off on where money's going. That's all they do. It's not running day-to-day operations, for God's sake. As Reform members, which I joined last week, we need to demand that Reform doesn't just become another member of the Uniparty full of the same men who destroyed the country in the first place. Yes, Zaya Yusuf and Nick Candy, they are the people that obviously destroyed the country. Just what a ridiculous schizo arc Wolf's on. Why isn't Rupert Lowe the party chairman? Because why does he need to be? I'm pretty sure he's I can't remember his title exactly, but he's effectively the man who talks about business and farms in Reform UK, because obviously he has contact with farmers, and I believe he might even own a farm, I can't remember. And he is also the main businessman of the party. So that's why. And again, your chairman is just a glorified leader of party meetings. That's basically it. A chairman really doesn't hold all that much power. They're a glorified secretary, for God's sake. But I decided to go through that tweet because it is a very good distillation of pretty much every issue I have with the anti-reform right. I'm not here, as I have to constantly say that you cannot criticise Reform UK for things. You can. Obviously you can. People who watch my videos know that I have some problems with Reform. They are a private company is a frankly pathetic one. The only type of person who should care about that are frankly Marxists, and frankly you should not be on the right wing if you are Marxist in any way. The whole reasoning behind Nigel Farage owning most shares and being party leader at the moment, which again he was voted in by conference anyway, is that in the past, with UKIP say, he has been burned by the National Electoral Committee, where effectively they wanted a bigger say than they needed and ended up effectively sinking the party. There's no doubt about that. Getting rid of Farage and the NEC trying to take over and screwing him over, it sank UKIP, without a shadow of a doubt. And people I know who are still in UKIP still hate the NEC because they got drunk on power. They now have a membership of like 1,000 or something, and effectively they are leader of the ashes of UKIP. Pointless. So obviously, due to that, he is being very careful this time round to actually have a party in his own image, and once that's happened, obviously we voted on a constitution that's in his image, so it's what he's got, and he feels fairly safe this time round, and he feels fairly safe, I would imagine, that he is grooming someone to be the next party leader. I don't know if it's Richard Tice, I don't know if it's necessarily Rupert Lowe, I don't know if it's someone way younger. Either way, this is the thing, you gotta just trust the plan. There's no other option here. What is the point of being Reform UK if they have some uniparty donors? Why are you not happy that they are getting donors? Donors leads to further resources to support canvassers, to support branches, to support conferences, to support more meetings, where these people will be out helping Reform UK, because once again, there was absolutely nobody under any illusion that the leader was going to be anyone else for the next few years than Nigel Farage. You've got to understand how stupid this point of view is. Effectively, Ben Habib and everyone else who follows him seems to be under the impression that people are joining Reform with the chance to vote Nigel Farage out. That is effectively what is being said with this whole democratization thing. I need you to understand how stupid you sound when you push that. I also need you to understand how stupid you sound when, for years, nobody has talked about the internal structure of any of the parties, but as soon as Reform start doing well, soon as Ben Habib leaves, oh, that's when we all have to start really thinking about this. Yeah, it is really important how reform is actually run internally. When we have masses and masses of issues, we are giving away sovereign British territory to Mauritius while also giving them billions of pounds a year for the pleasure. We have thousands and thousands of people coming over on small boats, getting free meals, free doctors, free dentists, and free beds in hotels for months and months on end. Crime rate is going through the roof, but it's not actually coming out in official statistics because no one bothers to report crimes anymore because our police are so useless, but they have time to go round to Alison Pearson to tell her that she was a bit racist. The economy is just going in shambles. I mean, at the end of the day, when you've got all these problems going on from Parliament, do you really, really care that it's the Nigel Farage party? I mean, in the long term, yeah, fair enough, there might be issues there, but my God, we have massive, bigger issues at the moment coming from the Uniparty. And you're here saying that people who are out here publicly saying, yeah, the Tories and Labour, they've broken all their promises that they promised me, and I want someone that's making similar promises from their rhetoric that is actually going to deliver on them. You're going to complain about that? There are very real criticisms of reform. All these ones that I've gone through in this video ain't it, and some of them are just outright lies that just keep being repeated as memes. Lawrence Fox, of all people, saying that Reform are actually subscribers rather than members has to be the biggest bout of moronic hypocrisy I've ever seen. But, well, God. This whole thing has just been a disaster from everyone on the right, and I am very disillusioned with the online right at the moment, as you can probably tell. This probably won't be the last video I make, having to tell people they are being idiots with their criticisms of Reform. You can all do better than this. I've seen you all do better than this. And the fact of the matter is that Reform is really our only hope. You can tell that by all these people whinging about Reform, then joining the party. But don't come to me and tell me, someone who's been a member of Reform for about a year now, how the party should be run. I'm going to leave this in the hands of the trusty professionals, people who have been involved in politics for years, people who, you know, delivered us a referendum on Brexit and then got us Brexit, to then force the Tory party, again, to actually move to the right. Has it worked properly? No. That's why he's not making deals with them anymore, and that's why you need to get behind him and trust the plan. Otherwise, you know, you can go off and join some of the alternative parties who aren't even fielding parliamentary candidates and say, yes, these are definitely our only hope, the people who are going around Jew hunting in public. Goodness me, honestly, the online right need a complete burning of all the dead wood. It's just getting ridiculous at this point. Anyway, I think that's enough of my final rant for 2024. I would like to give a massive thank you, obviously, to all of you that have supported me through the year. This is the year I made it to 10,000. This is the year where, frankly, I'm getting decent pocket money from doing this hobby, which has taken 7 years. There's no way it's anywhere near being my full-time job, but you are really making it what it is. You know, the audience, very special thank you to you. Have a great, great New Year celebration. And let's hope 2025 is the turning point of the clown decade. I thought it would come a bit later. Turns out it might not. Turns out we might actually have, genuinely, with really bad things happening, don't get me wrong, in 2025, but a complete turn and a complete revolution of the way we look at politics. Anyway, it's shill time. Friday, we are having Laughing at the Guardian with some Warmin. We have special guests from the Low Seaters on, so do come along to that at 8 PM. On Monday, we have the Antiquity stream, so we'll be talking about the Peloponnesian Wars yet again. And then on Tuesday, it is a Tosh Talks, where we are doing a 2025 bingo card with the Worcester Club. So do go join the Worcester Club. The links are all down below. As for this channel, the best way to help out is to subscribe. An even better way to help out is to send me membership money, and an even better way is to send me super chats and super thanks all the time, but obviously these are basically just purely donations, so it's totally up to you if you want to do that or not. But with that, that's everything I had for you for today, so once again, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.